The sun was setting over a quiet suburban neighborhood, where neat rows of houses stood side by side with trimmed lawns and fresh coats of paint. It was the kind of place where people waved from their driveways, kids rode their bikes, and families gathered for weekend barbecues. At least that was how it looked from the outside. But behind the clean fences and shiny cars, there were rules, strict rules, managed by a group called the Homeowners Association, or HOA. Amir and his wife Sarah had just moved into this neighborhood a month ago. Amir had served in the Navy for many years, traveling across seas, facing storms, and living through challenges that tested both body and mind. After years of duty, he decided to settle down with his wife and start a quieter life. They saved for years to buy this house, and for Sarah, it was a dream come true. She loved the idea of planting flowers in the front yard, decorating the porch, and inviting her parents over for tea. But not everyone was happy to see them move in. From the moment they arrived, there were stares from a few neighbors. Some smiled politely, but others whispered among themselves. Sarah noticed it when she went for walks. Sometimes she would pass by groups standing near their driveways, and the moment she got closer, the conversations would hush. One afternoon, Sarah decided to visit the community garden near the park. She carried a basket of seeds and tools, her face bright with excitement. It reminded her of her childhood when she used to help her grandmother plant vegetables. As she entered the garden, she noticed 3 men in uniform standing near the gate. Their uniforms weren't police uniforms, but something close. Dark shirts with badges that said HOA Security. They had radios clipped to their belts and a stiff way of talking, as if guarding a fortress instead of a neighborhood. "Excuse me, ma'am," one of them said, blocking her way. "Can we help you?" "Yes, I just wanted to use the community garden. I live here," Sarah replied politely, holding up her basket. The man narrowed his eyes. "You live here? Which house?" Sarah was surprised by the tone. "We live on Maple Street. House number 12. My husband and I moved in last month." The other 2 men exchanged looks. "House 12, huh?" one of them muttered. Then the first man cleared his throat. "Do you have your resident ID card?" Sarah shook her head. "I wasn't told I needed one. I just wanted to plant a few flowers." "Isn't this garden for everyone in the neighborhood?" The man sighed heavily, as if she had broken an important law. "Rules are rules. No card, no entry. You should know better." Sarah's smile faded. "I'm sorry, I really didn't know. Can I apply for one somewhere?" Instead of answering kindly, the man frowned deeper. "Listen, ma'am, we don't want any trouble. People who don't belong here can't use the facilities. Please leave." The word struck her heart. "Don't belong?" she repeated softly. One of the other guards shrugged. "This area is for verified residents only. Maybe you're confused. Maybe you should go back home." Sarah felt a rush of embarrassment. People walking by were beginning to look at her, some curious, some whispering. She lowered her eyes, picked up her basket, and quietly turned away. She didn't want to cause a scene. When she got back home, Amir was fixing a loose hinge on the back door. He noticed immediately that her smile was gone. "Sarah, what happened?" he asked, putting down his tools. She hesitated, then told him everything. Amir listened silently, his jaw tightening with every word. He had been through many battles in life, but nothing stung him more than seeing his wife disrespected. "They told you that you don't belong here?" Amir repeated slowly. Sarah nodded. "I didn't argue. I just came back. Maybe we should ask the HOA for an ID card, or maybe I should avoid the garden." But Amir shook his head. "No, this is our home. You belong here as much as anyone. Nobody has the right to make you feel like a stranger." That night, Amir couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the scene in his mind, imagining his wife standing there with her basket, only to be turned away by men who thought they had power over her. He had seen this kind of behavior before. People who wore uniforms but forgot the meaning of respect. The next morning, Amir decided to go with Sarah to the HOA office. It was located near the community center, a small building with glass doors and a flagpole outside. Inside, a woman at the front desk greeted them with a practiced smile. "Good morning. How can I help you?" Amir spoke firmly. "My wife was stopped at the community garden yesterday. She was told she couldn't enter because she didn't have an ID card. We'd like to apply for one." The woman tapped on her keyboard and asked for their names. After a few moments, she looked up and said, "Yes, I see your file. Your residence. You are allowed to use all community facilities. I'm not sure why security stopped you." Sarah leaned forward. "They said I didn't belong." The woman's smile faltered. That should not have happened. I'll report it. Meanwhile, let me print your ID cards. Within minutes, Sarah had a plastic card with her photo and address on it. Amir took his own as well. But the sting of yesterday's encounter didn't fade so easily. Later that week, the couple attended a neighborhood meeting at the community hall. The HOA leaders sat at a long table in front, with rows of chairs for residents. The three men from the garden stood by the door like guards. When Sarah saw them, her stomach tightened. Amir noticed, and his hand gently squeezed hers. During the meeting, residents discussed small issues like parking spaces, lawn care, and playground safety. Then one of the leaders opened the floor for questions. Amir stood up. "My name is Amir. My wife and I live on Maple Street. I want to ask why your security guards are treating residents like outsiders." The room went quiet. All eyes turned to him. The guards at the back stiffened. He continued. "My wife went to the community garden, a place open to all residents. Instead of welcoming her, they blocked her way, demanded ID, and told her she doesn't belong. That is not acceptable." Whispers spread across the hall. The leader at the table cleared his throat. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. I assure you, our security team was only following procedure." Amir's voice stayed calm but strong. "Procedure should not involve disrespect. My wife belongs here. Every resident deserves to feel welcome, not judged." Sarah looked at her husband with admiration. He spoke not with anger, but with the quiet strength of a man who had defended his values many times before. The room listened. Even those who had whispered doubts before were now nodding slowly. The leader finally said, "We'll review the matter." "Thank you." But as Amir and Sarah left the hall, the three guards exchanged glances. Their pride had been challenged. And in their eyes, the matter was far from over. What started as a simple walk to the garden had now become something larger. Sarah had felt the sting of rejection, and Amir had stood up in her defense. But the HOA security didn't like being questioned, and in the days ahead, the couple would discover just how far some people would go to prove their control. To Amir, it wasn't just about flowers or gardens anymore. It was about dignity, respect, and the right to live in peace. He had faced storms at sea and battles abroad. Now he was about to face a different kind of storm, right here in his own neighborhood. The following week in the neighborhood felt different for Sarah. Before, she used to step outside with excitement, eager to explore her new surroundings, but now she walked carefully, noticing every glance and whisper. Some neighbors greeted her with warm smiles, yet others stared for too long, their eyes filled with unspoken judgment. She told herself to ignore it, but deep down she knew the garden incident had left a mark. Amir, on the other hand, carried himself the same way he always did, shoulders straight, steps firm, eyes steady. Years of discipline had taught him never to let people's stares shake his peace. Still, he noticed the way Sarah hesitated whenever they passed the community hall or the garden. One Saturday morning, Amir suggested, "Let's go for a walk around the park together. We should not let anyone take our joy away." Sarah agreed, though her steps were slower than usual. The air was crisp. Children's laughter echoed from the swings, and families enjoyed picnics on the grass. For a while, Sarah began to relax. But as they reached the far corner of the park, three familiar figures appeared. The same security men who had stopped her at the garden now stood near the path. Their leader, the man with the sharp jaw and narrow eyes, stepped forward. Well, if it isn't Maple Street's new couple." His voice was smooth but carried a sting underneath. Amir kept his face calm. "Good morning," the man smirked. "Morning. We just wanted to remind you both that rules are rules. We heard you went to the board meeting. Brave of you to speak up." Sarah tightened her grip on Amir's hand. Something in the man's tone felt less like a reminder and more like a warning. Amir replied evenly, "We only asked for respect. That shouldn't be a problem." The guard's eyes darkened. "Respect is earned, not given. Around here, we keep things in order. Some people think they can just walk in, act like they belong, and demand rights. That doesn't sit well with everyone." Sarah's chest tightened. She wanted to speak, but Amir gave her hand a gentle squeeze, silently telling her to stay calm. He looked at the guard directly. "We live here. That is enough." The guard tilted his head. "We'll see about that." With that, he motioned to the others and walked away, leaving a trail of unease behind. The rest of the walk felt heavy. Sarah's mind raced. "Amir, did you hear what he said?" It sounded like a threat. Amir nodded slowly. "Yes, I heard. and that means we must stay alert. But do not worry. I've faced storms far worse than this. They want to play a game of intimidation. We won't fall into it. Still, Sarah's heart wouldn't settle. That night, as she sat by the window watching the streetlights glow, she saw the same men walk slowly past their house. They didn't knock, they didn't speak. They simply walked by, glancing at the windows as if checking who lived inside. A chill ran through her spine. The next day, Amir decided to meet one of the older residents of the neighborhood, a man named Mr. Rahim. He had lived there for more than 20 years and was known for his wisdom. Amir found him trimming the hedge outside his house. "Good morning, Mr. Rahim," Amir greeted. The elderly man looked up with a smile. "Ah, Amir, good morning, son. How are you settling in?" Amir sighed. "That is why I came. I wanted to ask you something. Have the HOA guards always been this strict?" Mr. Rahim's smile faded. He looked around carefully before speaking. "Those men, they call themselves security, but most of us see them as trouble. They enjoy power. They pick and choose who to bother. Some families avoid conflict by staying quiet. Others leave the neighborhood after a few years." The board pretends not to notice. Amir's jaw tightened. "So this has been happening for years?" Mr. Rahim nodded. "Yes, but most people don't want to challenge them. They fear more trouble. You spoke up at the meeting, didn't you?" "Yes," Amir admitted. "That explains it," Mr. Rahim said softly. "Now they see you as a problem." Sarah, who had joined them, asked in a small voice, "But why? Why would they treat residents this way?" Mr. Rahim looked at her kindly. "Because some people think power gives them the right to judge who belongs and who does not. But you must not lose hope. There are good people here too. Many neighbors respect you for speaking up. They just won't say it out loud yet." His words gave Sarah a little comfort. She thanked him, though worry still lingered. Over the next few days, life carried on, but small signs of tension grew. One morning, Sarah found their mailbox left open with letters scattered on the ground. Another evening, Amir noticed muddy footprints near their porch, though it hadn't rained. Nothing serious enough to prove wrongdoing, but enough to disturb their peace. One evening, Sarah was walking back from the store when she saw one of the guards leaning against a lamppost near her street. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, watching. When she walked past, he gave a slow smile and said, "Evening." His tone made her hurry her steps until she reached the safety of home. She told Amir immediately. His eyes grew firm. "This is no longer about rules. This is harassment." Sarah sat down, worry clear in her voice. "What if they don't stop? What if they make things worse?" Amir placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we face it together. But remember this, fear is what they want. We won't give it to them." That night, Amir sat alone in the living room long after Sarah went to bed. His thoughts were sharp and steady. He had dealt with intimidation before in faraway places where danger lurked in shadows. He knew one thing for certain. Standing silently only gave bullies more power. The next morning, Amir decided to act. He went to the HOA office again and asked to meet the head of the board, a man named Mr. Collins. The secretary hesitated but eventually allowed him in. Mr. Collins was a tall man with silver hair and a calm voice. His office was decorated with awards and photographs of community events. He welcomed Amir with a practiced smile. "What can I do for you, Mr. Amir?" he asked. Amir spoke directly. "Your security guards are harassing residents. They stopped my wife without reason, followed us at the park, and now they linger near our house. This cannot continue." Mr. Collins leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "I'm sorry to hear that. But our security team is only there to maintain order. Perhaps there has been some misunderstanding." Amir kept his eyes steady. "There is no misunderstanding. If your guards continue this behavior, I will take the matter to higher authorities." The smile on Mr. Collins's face faltered for the first time. His eyes sharpened. "Now, Mr. Amir, let us not escalate things unnecessarily. We want harmony in this neighborhood. You are new here. Maybe it will take time for everyone to adjust." Amir stood. Respect should not take time. It should be immediate. With that, he turned and left the office, his steps firm. Outside, the air felt heavier. Amir knew his words had planted a seed. But whether it would bring change or conflict, he could not yet tell. That evening, as the couple sat on their porch watching the sunset, Sarah leaned against Amir. "Do you think they'll stop now?" Amir looked at the horizon, silent for a moment. I think this is just the beginning. And he was right. Because later that night, under the glow of the streetlights, the three guards gathered near the corner of Maple Street, whispering to one another. Their faces carried a mix of pride and challenge. To them, Amir was not just another resident anymore. He was someone who dared to speak back, someone who dared to resist their quiet control, and they were not planning to let that pass easily. Days passed, but the tension in the neighborhood did not fade. In fact, it grew heavier, like dark clouds gathering before a storm. Amir and Sarah tried to live normally, but small signs of pressure kept appearing. A trash bin from their house was found tipped over one morning. Sarah's flower pots were shifted from the porch to the grass. Little things, nothing too serious, yet enough to disturb the peace they had worked so hard to build. Sarah noticed her own behavior changing. She hesitated before stepping outside, glancing through the curtains before leaving the house. Once, she even avoided walking to the store because she saw one of the guards leaning near the corner. She felt trapped in the very place that was supposed to be home. Amir noticed every detail. He remained calm on the surface, but inside, his thoughts sharpened with determination. He had been trained never to let fear control his family. He reminded himself daily that bullies fed on silence. One morning, while Amir was watering the front lawn, a neighbor named Aisha approached. She lived 2 houses away and often waved at Sarah, though until now they had only exchanged small talk. "Good morning," Amir greeted warmly. Aisha glanced around before speaking softly. "Amir, I need to tell you something. People in the neighborhood have been talking. Some of them support you, but they are afraid to say it openly. Others think the guards are only doing their job. And then, there are a few who enjoy watching the trouble." Amir set down the hose. "Thank you for telling me. But why would anyone support the guards if they know the truth?" Aisha sighed. "Because some residents believe staying quiet keeps them safe. They think if they don't speak up, the guards won't bother them. They don't want to risk their comfort." Sarah, who had stepped outside, joined the conversation. "But doesn't silence only make the guards stronger?" Aisha gave her a sad smile. "Yes, it does. But fear is powerful. Many families would rather live quietly than face conflict. Still, I wanted you to know you are not alone. There are people who admire your courage." Her words gave Sarah a little comfort. It felt good to know at least some neighbors were silently on their side. That afternoon, Amir decided to take Sarah out for a drive. They left the neighborhood for a while, visiting a nearby market and stopping at a cafe. Sarah felt herself breathe easier outside those streets, but when they returned, they found something that made her heart sink. Their front gate had been marked with chalk. It wasn't words, only a crude cross shape drawn across the metal. It washed away with water easily, but its message was clear. They were being watched. Amir's face stayed calm, but Sarah saw the steel in his eyes as he cleaned the mark away. "This is not about rules anymore," he said quietly. "This is about power." That evening, they sat together on the porch. Sarah leaned against him, her voice low. "Do you think we made a mistake moving here?" Amir shook his head. "No, the mistake would be running away. Home is not just walls and a roof. Home is where we stand firm. If we leave, they win. If we stay strong, they lose." Sarah wanted to believe him. She admired his strength, but the unease in her heart remained. The following week, the HOA announced another community meeting. This time, Amir felt it was important to attend again. When they arrived, the hall was more crowded than usual. People whispered in corners, and the 3 guards stood at the back, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room. The meeting began with usual announcements: lawn care reminders, pool maintenance, parking regulations. Then the floor opened for resident concerns. Amir stood. "I have a question again." All eyes turned to him. The guards shifted. "My wife and I moved here to find peace, but instead of peace we find intimidation. Small acts, silent threats, and unwanted watching. This is not how a community should behave. We are residents. We have the same rights as anyone. If security is meant to protect us, then why do we feel unsafe because of them?" The room grew quiet. Whispers rose louder this time. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked down, unwilling to be seen taking sides. One of the board members, a woman named Mrs. Lee, spoke gently. "Mr. Amir, thank you for speaking. We take all concerns seriously. If you have evidence of harassment, we can review it." Amir nodded. "That is fair. I will collect evidence if needed. But let me also remind this room, silence helps no one. If it happens to us today, it could happen to you tomorrow. Sarah watched her husband with pride. His voice was calm but full of quiet power. For the first time, she saw some neighbors sit up straighter, as if they too felt his words touch them. But not everyone welcomed his speech. From the back of the room, the lead guard let out a soft chuckle, just loud enough for some to hear. His smirk made it clear he did not take Amir's words seriously. The meeting ended with polite thanks, but the air was heavy. As Amir and Sarah walked home, a neighbor approached quietly from behind. It was a man named Kamal who lived near the playground. "You spoke bravely tonight," Kamal whispered. "But be careful. Those guards don't like being challenged. I've seen them push families before slowly, until they leave the neighborhood. They don't want anyone questioning their control." Amir thanked him and walked on, his mind deep in thought. Later that night, as Sarah made tea, Amir sat by the window, watching the street. Under the glow of the streetlights, the three guards stood again at the corner, speaking in low voices. When they noticed Amir watching, they turned away but did not leave. Sarah joined him, setting the cup of tea on the table. "They're out there again, aren't they?" "Yes," Amir said softly. "And they will keep coming." "But so will I," Sarah touched his hand. "I believe in you. But promise me something. Promise me you won't let this fight change who you are." Amir looked at her, his eyes steady. "I promise. Strength is not about anger. It is about standing firm without losing yourself." The next morning, Amir bought a small security camera and fixed it near the porch. If the guards wanted to play their games, he would at least gather proof. Sarah helped him set it up, though she felt uneasy, like their home was becoming less of a refuge and more of a watchtower. For a few days, things were quiet. The guards didn't approach, though they still lingered at corners. Amir kept busy with work around the house while Sarah tried to focus on her garden. She planted new flowers, determined not to let fear take away her simple joys. But then came Friday night. As the couple prepared for bed, a sudden sound echoed outside, the clang of their trash bin tipping over. Amir quickly stepped outside. The guards weren't there, but fresh muddy shoe prints led away from the bin toward the street. The next morning, when Amir checked the security camera, he found a shadowy figure approaching their yard late at night. The image wasn't clear enough to show a face, but the build and uniform shape made it obvious who it was. He saved the footage carefully. Sarah asked, "Will you show this to the board?" "Yes," Amir said. "And if they ignore it, I will go higher. Enough is enough." That weekend, Amir met Mr. Rahim again, the elderly neighbor. He showed him the footage. Mr. Rahim sighed. "I warned you, son. These men will not stop easily. But maybe your strength will awaken the others. Maybe people will finally speak." Amir nodded. "That is what I hope." As days went by, more neighbors began to greet Amir openly. Some even whispered words of encouragement when passing. Sarah noticed the change too. The silence was breaking slowly but surely, but the guards also noticed. Their smirks grew sharper, their presence heavier. One evening, as Amir walked home from the store, the lead guard crossed his path. "Careful, Mr. Navy," he said softly, using the word like a challenge. "You're making waves where the water should stay calm. People don't like waves." Amir looked him straight in the eye. "Waves wash away dirt." For a moment, the two men stood facing each other, silent but unyielding. Then the guard stepped aside with a smile that held no warmth. That night, as Amir and Sarah sat together, the air was filled with a new awareness. The battle was no longer hidden. It was open now. And though it was not fought with fists or weapons, it carried the weight of something just as serious, the fight for dignity and belonging. Amir knew part one of this struggle had been about noticing the wrong. Part two had been about warnings and pressure. But now, in this new stage, it was about standing strong, not just for themselves, but for the whole neighborhood. And as Sarah leaned against him, whispering, "I trust you," Amir felt the strength of her faith settle into his heart. Whatever storm was coming, they would face it together. The days that followed carried an unusual mix of tension and quiet support. Amir and Sarah began to notice that more neighbors were watching what unfolded. Some waved at them with new warmth. Others whispered encouragement as they passed. It was clear that their courage had touched people, though most still hesitated to speak openly in public. Yet with every smile they received, the HOA guards seemed to grow more restless. They no longer hid their disapproval. They lingered near the park when Sarah walked there. They passed by Amir's house more often. their footsteps heavy on the pavement. Their silence was meant to speak louder than words. One evening, Sarah invited Aisha over for tea. The two women sat in the living room while Amir worked in the garden outside. Sarah poured tea into delicate cups and asked gently, "Do you ever feel safe here?" Aisha looked down at her cup. "Safe, only when I stay quiet. That's what most families do. We tell our children not to play too loudly, not to break rules, not to complain. The guards watch everything, and the board stays silent," Sarah sighed. "But why? Why should people accept this? Isn't this supposed to be a community, not a prison?" Aisha gave a small smile. "Because most people believe fighting back will only make life harder. They don't want late-night knocks on their door. They don't want their cars scratched or their mail lost. So they pretend everything is fine." Sarah felt a wave of sadness, but then her voice grew steady. "Amir says silence only helps those who want power. If we stay quiet, they grow stronger. I think he is right." Aisha looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Maybe you are right. Maybe it takes one family to show the rest it is possible." Meanwhile, outside, Amir was finishing his work in the garden when Mr. Rahim walked over with his cane. His wise eyes carried a thoughtful look. "Amir, may I speak with you?" "Of course, sir," Amir replied. Mr. Rahim lowered his voice. "I've been hearing things. The guards are not pleased with you. They say you are disturbing the peace of the neighborhood. But Amir, you must not back down. Many of us have suffered silently for years. If you stand strong, you may awaken courage in others." Amir's eyes held calm determination. "I did not come here to start a fight. But if standing for respect creates conflict, then so be it. This is our home. Sarah should never feel like a stranger here." Mr. Rahim smiled faintly. "Your words remind me of when I was young. I too once spoke up, but I did not have enough support. Times are different now. Maybe you will succeed where I could not." That night, Amir shared both conversations with Sarah. She listened carefully and finally said, "So we are not alone after all. People are watching. Some are waiting." "Yes," Amir said firmly. "And if the guards think they can silence us with fear, they will be disappointed. Fear is not welcome in our home." The next community meeting arrived sooner than expected. This time the hall was filled more than ever before. Word had spread about Amir's speeches and about the camera footage he had collected. People wanted to see what would happen next. Sarah sat quietly beside Amir, her hands folded in her lap, her heart racing. She could feel the eyes of the guards from across the hall. Their stares were sharp, but Amir's presence beside her gave her strength. When the floor opened for concerns, Amir stood once again. His voice was calm but carried across the room. "I have evidence that our so-called security is not protecting us. They are harassing us. Here is proof from my own camera." He held up printed images from the footage showing the shadowed figure approaching his yard late at night. Though the picture wasn't crystal clear, the outline of the uniform was visible. The room filled with whispers. The head of the board, Mr. Collins, cleared his throat. "Mr. Amir, this is concerning. But this image is not entirely clear. Perhaps it could have been someone else." Amir's voice grew firmer. "Perhaps. But this is not only about one image. This is about a pattern of intimidation. About being told we don't belong, about being followed, watched, and mocked. Is this the kind of neighborhood we want to build?" The whispers grew louder. For the first time, several residents nodded openly. One woman stood. "I saw those guards stopping Mrs. Sarah at the garden that day. I was there. It was unnecessary," another man spoke. "My children told me the guards scolded them for playing near the fountain, even though they weren't breaking rules. I didn't complain because I feared more trouble. But now I think I should." Voices began to rise across the hall one after another, until the room buzzed with shared frustrations. Years of silence began to crack. The guards shifted uncomfortably at the back, their proud stances weakening as more people spoke up. For the first time, their authority looked uncertain. Sarah's eyes filled with quiet relief. She had never imagined the neighbors would dare to speak like this. Amir remained calm, simply listening, his presence steady. He had planted the seed, and now it was beginning to grow. Mr. Collins raised his hands for silence. Please. We will review these complaints. But let us remember, security is important. We cannot simply dismiss them without proper process." Amir replied. "No one is against safety. We all want safety. But safety without respect is not safety at all. If guards treat residents as outsiders, then they are not protecting us, they are controlling us. That must change. The applause that followed was small but clear. For the first time, support was no longer hidden. After the meeting, several neighbors approached Amir and Sarah, thanking them quietly. Even those who had once looked away now offered nods of respect. Sarah felt warmth bloom in her heart. For the first time since they moved in, she felt the neighborhood beginning to feel like a community. But the guards were not finished. Later that night, as Amir stepped outside for air, he saw them standing again at the corner. Their leader called out softly, "Enjoy your victory, Mr. Navy. But remember, waves fade. The tide always returns." Amir looked at him calmly. "And every tide brings change." The guard's smile faltered. He turned and walked away, his men following. Sarah joined Amir on the porch. "They won't give up, will they?" "No," Amir admitted. "But neither will we. And now we are not alone." The following days proved his words true. More neighbors began greeting Sarah with kindness. A mother invited her to join a small group for morning walks. Children waved when she passed. It felt like a door was slowly opening. Amir too felt the shift. He noticed that when the guards walked by, more people watched them closely instead of avoiding eye contact. Their silent reign was weakening, yet tension remained. The guards still patrolled with sharp eyes, still lingered near corners, still tried to intimidate. But now every act was noticed. Every shadow was questioned. One evening, Amir and Sarah sat with Mr. Rahim and Aisha in their garden. The air was cool, the flowers blooming. Conversation flowed easily and laughter filled the air. For a moment it felt like peace had returned. Mr. Rahim smiled. "This is how it should be. Neighbors sharing tea, not fear." Sarah nodded. "Yes, I almost forgot what this feels like." Amir looked around at them all. "This is why we must stand firm. Not just for ourselves, but for this." As the evening ended and their guests left, Amir looked at the stars above. He knew the storm was not over. The guards still had pride to protect, and men who craved control rarely surrendered quietly. But he also knew something had changed. The silence was broken. The neighborhood had found its voice, and in that voice lay hope. The days after the community meeting carried a different air. It was as if the whole neighborhood had woken from a long sleep. People greeted one another more openly. Children laughed louder in the park, and small gatherings began to take place on porches. The silence that once blanketed the streets was slowly being lifted. But though the spirit of the neighbors was rising, the tension with the guards had not ended. The HOA security still walked with heavy boots, their eyes sharp, their presence thick with warning. They lingered longer near Amir's home, their shadows stretching under the streetlights. They wanted to remind everyone that they still held authority. Amir knew this was not the end. He had lived through harder storms and understood that those who thrived on control would not surrender easily. But he also knew that true strength came not from fear, but from unity. One evening, as Amir watered his garden, Sarah came outside with a thoughtful look. "Amir, I think we need to do more than speak at meetings. People are starting to believe, but they need something stronger, something that shows them they can stand together." Amir put down the watering can. "What do you have in mind?" She smiled softly. "A gathering. Not a secret one, not hidden. A real gathering in the park. Families, children, neighbors. We can invite everyone, not to fight, not to argue, just to show that we belong here together." Amir's eyes softened with pride. "That is a beautiful idea. A gathering of peace, not protest. It will show that this neighborhood is not theirs to control." And so the plan began. Sarah spoke to the women she had started walking with. Amir spoke with Mr. Rahim and Aisha, who eagerly agreed to help. Slowly, word spread. Families whispered to one another. Children ran with excitement, and the idea grew into something larger than any single voice. When the evening came, the park filled with people. Blankets were spread on the grass, small tables held food, and the air carried the smell of fresh bread and spiced rice. Children played with kites and balls, while parents watched with relaxed smiles. It was simple, but it was powerful. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt alive. Amir and Sarah walked hand in hand through the gathering, greeted with warm nods and smiles. Mr. Rahim sat under a tree, surrounded by children listening to his stories. Aisha laughed with other women near the food table. It was a picture of harmony, but the guards soon arrived. Their boots struck the pavement, their shoulders broad, their eyes cold. They stood at the edge of the park, watching, their presence heavy. The laughter softened but did not stop. Parents held their children close, neighbors stood taller, and Amir stepped forward. He walked calmly to the center of the park and raised his voice. "My friends," he said clearly, "this is what community looks like. Families together, children happy, neighbors supporting one another. This is not against anyone. This is for all of us. No guard, no rule, no board can take this from us." Applause filled the air, stronger than before. The guards shifted, their discomfort visible. They had expected fear, not courage. Sarah stood beside Amir and added, "We belong here, all of us. No one has the right to tell a mother she does not belong, or a child that they cannot laugh. This neighborhood is ours, not theirs." The cheers grew louder. It was no longer a gathering. It was a statement. The guards finally stepped forward. Their leader spoke, his voice sharp. "This gathering is not authorized. You are breaking the rules." Amir looked directly at him. "Show us the rule that forbids neighbors from sitting in their own park. Show us the rule that forbids children from laughing. We will not leave because this is our right." The guard's face darkened. He looked around, expecting fear, but saw only steady eyes staring back. Even Mr. Rahim stood with his cane, his old voice strong. "We will not be silent anymore. Enough is enough." A wave of agreement swept the park. People stood shoulder to shoulder, their voices united. For the first time, the guards were outnumbered not just in bodies but in spirit. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. Their leader muttered something under his breath and motioned for them to retreat. They turned and walked away, their boots no longer striking with confidence but with retreat. The park erupted in cheers. Children clapped, parents hugged, neighbors laughed with relief. Sarah held Amir's hand tightly, her eyes shining. They left. They really left. Amir nodded quietly. "Because fear no longer works here. They know it now." That night the gathering lasted until the stars filled the sky. Songs were sung, stories were shared, and the bond of the neighbors grew stronger than ever. It was more than a victory. It was a new beginning. The following morning, something unexpected happened. Mr. Collins, the head of the board, knocked on Amir's door. His face looked tired, his voice lower than before. "Mr. Amir," he said slowly, "the board has decided to review the role of the guards. Too many complaints have come forward. We cannot ignore them any longer." Amir studied him carefully. "That is wise. But remember, this is not about one family. This is about the whole community. Respect must be the rule here, not fear." Mr. Collins nodded. "You have made your point clear. The guards will be dismissed for now, and a new system will be discussed. Perhaps community volunteers, perhaps cameras, but no more intimidation." When the door closed, Sarah hugged Amir tightly. "It is over." At last, Amir smiled faintly. "It is not over, Sarah. It is only the beginning. We must continue to care for this place to keep the peace alive." But yes, the storm has passed. In the days that followed, the change was visible everywhere. The streets felt lighter, the air warmer. Children played freely without stern voices chasing them. Women walked without looking over their shoulders. Men greeted one another with open pride instead of hushed whispers. Mr. Rahim began hosting weekly story circles for the children. Aisha started teaching a small cooking class for the young mothers. Sarah found herself surrounded by new friends, women who once looked away now eager to share their lives. And Amir, though always watchful, finally felt at ease. He no longer had to stand alone. The community itself had become strong. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold, Amir and Sarah sat on their porch. They watched the children chasing one another with kites, their laughter ringing through the air. Sarah leaned against Amir's shoulder and whispered, "Do you hear that? That is the sound of home." Amir smiled. "Yes, and it will remain so as long as we protect it together." They sat in silence, hand in hand, as the stars slowly appeared above. The neighborhood had faced its shadows, but now it stood in the light. Not because of one man or one family, but because everyone had found the courage to speak, to stand, and to belong. It was, at last, a new dawn.